Hello, happy Monday. I've been working on some stuff this weekend about character resistance and actually talking to my friend, who's also my best friend, is a Waldorf school teacher and also studied Reich and orgonomy like me, body, mind, psychology, for about as long as I did and went through therapy. And so she's also Catholic. So we have this amazing connection that we can run stuff by each other. And so we were talking about character resistance and this body, mind, spirit psychology book I have from Steiner. And I went through Steiner's lecture, Transforming the Soul. I think it was 59. And so I wrote some notes this weekend. And so today I'm just going to read the notes and then we'll pick up on it, because I thought these notes were really interesting, especially because Steiner compares it to the Ouroboros. And so I'm going to read these notes and then we'll talk about it tomorrow, because I already have some issues with it as compared to Reich's work on psychology and according to the Bible and the Catholic faith. I have some issues with this. So I just want to go over what Reich says, because I think I've written a lot about Reich and what he talks about with psychology and body-mind issues, and I just thought I really located the apex here. So he states that ego is the coincidence and object. It becomes an Ouroboros of you looking at yourself. We look at and perceive, sensing what's directly in front of us, and which is disharmony with the sentient body, affects sensation and perception. But the rational soul assimilates thoughts inwardly. I know I feel like this is like really heavy. You can listen to the, I did just jot down these notes, so take what you can. Maybe put the closed captions on, and then we'll sort of try to get through this. A hindrance from the images and a type of resistance not recognized by the type of thinking that fails to pursue processes to their conclusion. So he's saying the resistance comes from a hindrance of images. So they can't locate it in their mind, the actual picture of it. I wonder if this is related to now with the no inner voice. I don't know, the humanoids or whatever. This part of the population that is basically soulless. He's saying that we can't think something all the way through. We can't think a concept or an idea or something that somebody's telling us all the way through. And what he mentions at the end of the lecture, I want to just interject this, is he compares that to somebody who asked him to prove, I don't know, something spiritual that you can't really explain in words. And he said, you can do it, even though a lot of these things are unexplainable because people can't, they don't know, they don't have a point of reference. But he said, the issue is you become exhausted trying to explain it because these people can't follow a thought all the way through. So they just reject it and they can't take the thought to the finish line. So it's interesting. So keep that in mind while I read this. And let me make sure, I want to make sure, because I've been having some sound issues and I don't know really why. So make sure I'm holding it correctly. Okay, so A hindrance from the images and type of resistance not recognized by the type of thinking that fails to pursue processes to their conclusion. An example on how people mislead themselves and others, recognizing only their own logic and not the logic of the facts. Know-it-all narcissists. In parentheses, it's mine. Factual logic can only be present and attainable if we maintain control over the sentient and rational soul, mind, body, control over our etheric body, pathological breakdowns of our ideas from our etheric bodies, not being able to be a tool of our rational soul. So it starts from an error and it moves to mental disorder and a pathway to psychosis. Our etheric body throws obstacles. We produce chaotic, distorted thoughts mixed up from intrusions. Unable to think about soul matters, uses words to obscure and convey their limited understanding. So these people that can't think all the way through, they could be a professor. A lot of times these people go into these jobs. Psychology is huge in this because they can't help themselves. They want to be a Christian. And they basically want to play God and just sort of tiptoe around this stuff. And they end up being great hiders and manipulators themselves. And so he's saying people use words to obscure their ignorance, essentially. Chaotic confusion of the mind is not solely from heredity. So here we're going back to what I was talking about the other day. That's why I wanted to talk about my friend I had, who tried to tell me his bipolar was from genetic. Using tracks of thoughts that leads to the darkness of evolution, soul and spirit can originate only from soul and spirit. Francesco Redi, living matter can only originate in living matter. So likewise, he's saying soul and spirit can only originate from soul and spirit. Everything physical, there is something spiritual, a spiritual equivalent. Find the mistake in our rational soul to correct it so it's not transmitted to body. It is nonsense that external influences are the sole cause of mental illness as well. Illness occurs when we see the mistake uncooperated in the spiritual etheric body. The mistake then becomes repeated and normalized and accepted as habit. Regularly succumb to these influences. So the mistake becomes normalized, and then that's how illness, mental illness, and physical illness develops. Passing through the gate of death, everything we have done with thinking, feeling, and willing. The thought is in our soul life will work into the organization of our body. Understand a wide field of mental illness. If we take into account the previous existence, we must enter into earlier life and certain inherited quality, incarnations, ancestral, opposed to eugenics and genetics. That's actually my parentheses there. Characteristics reveal that what is working in the conscious soul can be hindered by the physical body. All those things arise in the symptoms of mental illness. And then I put parentheses, demonic manifestations of the higher self and lower self, the inner man and outer man, and the attachments of lower entities. I'm adding those in because he doesn't bring those in. He does talk about the inner and outer man. When the organs of our body work properly, our physical body is a healthy vehicle for our consciousness. A man going blind with his vision impaired, it makes him feel as if somebody was standing in his way often. It can become paranoid or even assuming. When eye trouble creates a hindrance in the psyche, mind, perception is then obscured and understanding is then compromised. Normal sight is no longer possible. And then again in my parentheses I write, see the suicides after LASIK surgery, loss of feeling and understanding in the world. Wilhelm Reich feelings with the eyes, and then the Italian senta con gli occhi, or lontano dagli occhi, lontano dal cuore. So far away from the eyes, far away from the heart. So describing things that our senses and our feelings in our eyes, when those are cut off. And I don't know if you remember, there was a lot of suicides a few years ago with that smile procedure, and people who got LASIK. I'm sure they're just still covering it up. An obstacle in the physical body causes resistance in the soul to the ego conscious expression. Getting through this. An obstacle, when organ takes prominence and results in megalomania, schizophrenia appear as symptoms when an open exchange with the outer world is obstructed, and I use blocking or ghosting, which are today's terms, causes the above symptoms. Harmony and disharmony in the mind, body, soul works all together. Inner and outer man interact. If the obstacles are too great, the inner and outer man cannot interact. Easily come over them with a strong inner soul life. So basically he's saying if you have a strong soul life, inner man, you can overcome these things easily. The outer man resists the inner man in a sick, abnormal soul life. I'll get back tomorrow.